younger days as an apprentice bard under the tutelage of old Cyrus, I found myself going to many war zones. During those days where the islands among the Great Sea were not the exotic wonderlands they are today, the few that were colonized by the great nations of the Phoenix Alliance and Altmari Dominion were more like simmering calderas of violence and intrigue. In short, the perfect training ground for a young bard that I was. Cyrus would always press that in such chaos, a traveling bard or skald would do well to be self-sufficient. As a young man, I was not as skilled at the healing spells that some of my friends and even my mentor employed. So, to compensate, a physician was hired to teach me everything that they could about how to properly use a healing kit. To this day, I am quite skilled in the uses of bandages and salves. The old dragonborn monk would take me to active scenes of battle. I, being inexperienced with the craft of healing, would stay in the tent with the clerics, playing sonnets and quoting inspiring speeches from long-dead generals and royalty. The soldiers in my care would find themselves invigorated by my inspiring words, all while the clerics on hand invoked their gods to heal and mend. My monk caretaker at the time was nowhere to be seen in the main healing tent, but at the top of the hill in the deep of the fighting. The old man could be seen applying salves and healing ointments at a touch. Using quick, precise movements to direct his craft, he was able to heal the simple wounds of the soldiers in his care. If I stopped to watch him closely, I could see him weaving through the battlefield like a wind, catching arrows and crossbow bolts with his bare hands and throwing them back at their attackers, all the while healing those he could and pulling those more seriously wounded from the fight. When he did the latter, it was the job of me and the clerics to run to the patient, grabbing him and taking him back to the tent to heal their more serious injuries. At the end of that bloody conflict, I learned much in the way of combat healing, as well as the viciousness of war. More than a few of my earlier works came from observing and at times taking part in those horrific conflicts. Many of them love letters to home from soldiers who never got to send them. Welcome to this episode of What the Feat, where we will be going over the healer and inspiring leader's feats. On a personal note, here in the States, Memorial Day is coming up, so I just want to wish all my fellow veterans a peaceful Memorial Day. So with that story, I hope to explain really what the feats look like in a practical roleplay sense. With that out of the way, I do want to get into the mechanics. Starting with the healer feat, you are an able physician, allowing you to mend wounds quickly and get your allies back into the fight. You gain the following benefits. When you use a healer's kit to stabilize a dying creature, that creature also regains 1 hit point. So normally with a healer's kit, which is found in your adventurer's pack, you can only use it to stabilize an ally. What that means is they still have 0 hit points, but they no longer have to roll death saving throws. Death saving throws, for all you new players out there, are what you roll when you hit 0 hit points. On your turn while in combat, you roll, instead of doing your action, you roll a death saving throw. You roll 3 death saving throws normally with a DC of 10, and you have to make at least 2 of them to stand back up with 1 hit point. I say normally 3 death saving throws because if you roll a nat 1 on your death saving throw, that counts as 2 failed saves. And if you roll a nat 20 on your death saving throw, you automatically get up with 1 hit point. Additionally, as part of the healer feat, as an action, you can spend one use of a healer's kit to tend to a creature and restore 1d6 plus 4 hit points to it, plus additional hit points equal to a creature's maximum number of hit dice. The creature can't regain hit points from this feat again until it finishes a short or long rest. So getting into that, it says, again, 1d6 plus 4 hit points plus additional hit points equal to the creature's hit die. Typically, creature's hit die is, or rather their maximum hit die is equal to their level. So level 4 Barbarian would have 4 hit die, D12 in their case, as opposed to a level 4 Warlock would have still 4 hit die, but a D8 would be their hit die. So in both cases, it would be 1d6 plus 4 plus 4. The first part of this feat is very useful. Typically, it can be, especially if you don't have a cleric in your party, which was really the point of this feat altogether, healing someone and using a healer's kit. Wow. A lot of people forget they even have a healer's kit, first of all. And second of all, normally it doesn't actually heal them, it just stabilizes them. And then you have to find other ways to heal them, i.e. usually health potions, which are obviously a limited supply. So that second part also comes into play, that you can, do a bit of healing to, again, stabilize a character, get them back in the fight, or, heal them after a battle. So I would frequently use this feat towards the end of a fight. If a character goes down, you stabilize them, you get them up to 1 hit point, you get them away from the fight. If someone can heal them, if someone has health potions, by all means use them. And then at the end of the fight, before your short rest, I would employ the second part of this feat. Do your short rest. As a bard, you could play your Song of Rest as well, to help with the healing. And then you could, if need be, you could actually use this second part of that feat again after the short rest on that same character. So, there's actually great potential in the use of this feat. Is it as good as just having a dedicated healer? No, not really. But if you don't have anyone who wants to specifically play one, having this feat on hand can be very useful. The second feat we are going over is the Inspiring Leader feat. Your words and deeds inspire others, strengthening your companion's resolve. If you spend 10 minutes encouraging your companions with a rousing speech, you grant up to 6 creatures that can hear you and understand you, including yourself, temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier plus your character level. Creatures affected by this feat cannot benefit from its effects again until they have taken a short rest. So this is a feat that gives temporary hit points to up to 6 individuals, again, including yourself. It's, the mechanics for temporary hit points. Remember that if you have temporary hit points from one thing, you cannot have temporary hit points from another thing as well. Meaning if you get, let's just pretend, 8 temporary hit points from this, and someone casts a spell that gives you 10 temporary hit points, you can only have one of them apply. So in that case, I would recommend taking the 10 instead of the 8. You cannot have 18, for example. Another D&D YouTuber uses the comparison of putting on those X-Men jackets. You can only wear one at once. And I think he goes on to additionally say that it doesn't help if you're dead. Meaning gaining temporary hit points or giving temporary hit points to a character who is at 0 hit points doesn't bring him back to life. Obviously, this feat would be very useful, particularly for a bard who finds himself healing a lot. At level 4, if you are a bard and you have 20 charisma, this would result in giving 9 points of temporary hit points. This does take 10 minutes to use, but if you use this in conjunction with, say, your Song of Rest or some other abilities, particularly I would say actually using this feat before a battle, that can be very useful. Again, that's 9 temporary hit points to 6 different creatures. So in total, that's actually 54 hit points you are giving out to your party. So when you look at it that way, that is significant healing. Again, in an early video I actually made about being a healer, I say that it's very important to be proactive in your healing. There should not be, if you have a dedicated healer in your party, there should be no battle that you start that you don't already have temporary hit points before the battle starts. Because basically temporary hit points are healing before you need healing. That actually does it for this episode of What the Feat. Next episode, we'll be going over the Keen Mind feat, so stay tuned for that. Also, I intend to, whenever possible, add in these short stories at the beginning of each episode. So let me know what you think, or if there was anything you'd like to add to those. Once again, this is Matthew with Bardman's Banter, wishing you all 1d10 worth of inspiration.